Today I'm looking at the James Webb Space Telescope, and what I'm going to show you is going to highlight how ridiculous all of this space stuff really is. First up, we've got a short clip coming from a space fan claiming that the James Webb Space Telescope absolutely destroys the flat Earth. Excuse me. Now, before we watch this short clip from the space fan, I'm going to simply just tell you what the flat Earth is from my stance. The flat Earth is simply demonstrable science that can be tested and verified by all, the results of which prove the globe is scientifically impossible. That is the flat Earth. If you want maps, models, it's full exploration off the back of the scientific fact that the globe is impossible. Until then, I stand by the things that can be tested and verified by all, that prove the globe is impossible. That is the flat Earth. So already we know this guy, this nerd, who's going to be claiming the space telescope is destroying the flat Earth, is already had his mind warped and propagandized by the very people that have put this man in some sort of mainstream trance. And as we can see from the start of his video, he's got a domed frisbee on fire in the middle of a vacuum. I mean, who's ever met anyone, I should say, that stands by a domed frisbee with water coming off the edges while it hovers in a vacuum? No one. But yet these people put this as their titles of their videos, their thumbnails. They have to put it there to justify their own idiocy and delusions, not realizing that for anyone with the slightest bit of common sense, you can see the spellcraft at work here, as people have to misrepresent what is simply demonstrable science and portray it as an absurd cartoon fantasy. The very silly stuff that came from the people that told you live on a ball. They've bought these globe believers, these space fans, they've bought into this extra product, this bit of propaganda, this misrepresentation of what really is just demonstrable science. They've attached all these delusions and misrepresentations to it and bought into it. And as we're about to see, Matey Boy here is going to think images are going to refute demonstrable science. He's not really, because he can't compute it. His representation or his understanding of the flat Earth has come from the mainstream media, which is just pure garbage. But let's have a look.
Well, everyone, what a moment this week it's been. NASA has released one image that has strapped a bomb to and completely obliterated the flat Earth. Last week, NASA released the first images from the James Webb Space Telescope, and it is simply breathtaking. What you are looking at may seem massive. However, this is but a tiny portion of the overall universe. But even in this one small patch of sky, we see thousands of galaxies, each of which contains billions of stars. The sheer magnitude is incalculable. Now, I hear a lot of people bandy around the word awesome, for the likes of a nice cup of coffee or getting the new iPhone. But this image really is awesome in the sense that it inspires awe. It gets the mind racing with questions like, does anybody live here?
I'm going to pause it there for our space-loving friend here, who cites an image as somehow proof now that every scientific demonstration that can be tested and verified by all on this earth is wrong. Oh, your image and your fantasies are great, mate, but they don't change the reality of the fact the globe's scientifically impossible. Can you not see your faulty logic here, pal? Where you cite a fucking obvious computer-generated image of a fantasy world that no one can test and verify for themselves, and you expect that now suddenly overrules what is the real flat Earth, as I've stated, is real demonstrable science that can be tested and verified by all. The only thing your fantasy image actually destroys is the imaginary flat Earth that resides in your head, put there by the same people giving you your fantasy image. These people are entertaining all sorts of inner pantomime unnecessarily. The mainstream are having a laugh with these people.
Or was there a civilization that evolved here and an intelligent species and are now gone? It boggles the mind. And it often makes me wish that I had studied something.
It boggles my mind that individuals, grown men, struggle to discern and think with any kind of logical train of thought here. They can't stand by demonstrable science that can be tested and verified by all. They abandon that for fear of going against the grain, simply because of an image and a collection of stories attached to lights in the sky. It's obviously CGI images. The globe's obviously scientifically impossible. Not an opinion, a scientific fact proved daily by every single globe believer on this earth. But what I'm about to show you now is the absurdity of this telescope when we just break a couple of things down here. This man's bigging it all up, a huge success. Everything's incredible. This is amazing. But all he's shown us is an image, a slightly clearer image of what Hubble provided years and years ago. It's just an updated story with a little bit more clarity to add to the story. But like I said, as we're about to see, it's actually criminal. And people like this lad's here, naivety, are actually pushing a darker agenda. Bear with me. Here I've got three images on the screen. Starting on the left, Hubble, $9.6 billion since the launch. In the middle, we got the James Webb, the latest space telescope, $10 billion since launch, and bearing in mind it's not long been going. And on the right, we've got a TikToker called Jenny, who's provided an image here for $0. And it's just as good. And of course, highlights the absurdity of these space telescopes. They cost billions and billions of dollars, and yet all we get are CGI images. Ones that Jenny, in this instance, has done equally good at no cost. Yet the Hubble, 9.6 billion, the James Webb, 10 billion, and all it's going to do is provide imagery. But at what cost does that come? So the latest figures, according to Google, how many homeless in the US? 580,000 were homeless in the US on any given night. So now I divide 580,000 by $10 billion to get some kind of breakdown of how much the US taxpayer could have helped the homeless problem in the US if it didn't fund this incredibly expensive $10 billion so-called space telescope to provide CGI images that a TikToker could provide for $0. And it turns out when we break it down, every single homeless person in the US could have got $17,241 to turn their lives around if they hadn't wasted that $10 billion on this silly space telescope, which, bearing in mind, is coming from well-known liars, NASA, who claim the Earth is a ball, which of course is scientifically impossible anyway. So you're dealing with fraudsters, well-known liars anyway, and then you break it down with the cost of this space telescope per head to the homeless in America, and you get a figure of $17,000. That would erase the homeless problem in the whole of the US by simply getting rid of that telescope and those silly CGI images, which can be recreated or even bettered for no dollars at all. Can you see how ridiculous all of this is now when you break that down? Let's see what we could get for $17,000 if we were homeless. 7 affordable camper vans under $25,000. We scroll down. A Chevy Astro conversion, second hand, price range between $2,000 and $10,000. Sleeps 2. So you'd still have $7,000 for food, fuel, training courses, clothing, turn your life around. What else we got? Dodge Grand Caravan conversion. Look at that. How much is that? 5 to 20, so you could get a cheap one of those. Sleeps 2 to 4 people. Obviously, the cheaper the better. That means the more fuel, food, and potentially something else. Training courses, clothing. And what else have we got? Any more? Ford Falcon 190, old school, between 6 and 12,000. Sleeps 4. You still have another, let's say it was at the topper end, 12 grand. You still have 5,000 US dollars to get some clothing, some fuel, some food, maybe even a training course. Essentially, erasing that telescope charade, you basically could erase the homeless problem in the whole of the US by using that money to get a direct result in helping humanity. I've just shown you they could get campers, training courses, clothing, enroll in a gym, one of these gyms that are nationwide, where you could use their showers and use it as a motivator to train as well, by having a shower, train. You got your camper, your cooking facilities, a roof over your head, the money you've saved, training courses, clothing. And then you go back to the images which this thing provided, which naive individuals like the space fan thought in his deluded mind destroyed flat earth. It only destroys the propaganda and the straw man misrepresentations, and it only destroys those in the imagination of people like the foolish space nerd who buy into the propaganda and are naive enough to believe in this tosh in the first place. The flat earth is simply demonstrable science that can be tested and verified by all, the results of which prove the globe's impossible and that we're being lied to by people who don't really care. If they cared, America wouldn't have all those homeless people on the streets. I've just given you a solution to solve that problem, and at the same point in time highlight the absurdity of that space telescope coming from well-known liars. It's a joke. You need to look at the core problem here. It lies at the education system. It's a rotten apple. It's not about empowerment, it's about enslavement. I've just broke this down to you with the mathematics, the budget, and the statistics, and shown the absurdity of this space telescope and the mainstream narrative. Telescopes about understanding and being better, understanding this place we find ourselves and helping ourselves, yet you can't even look after your home people here. And I've just shown you the money that was spent on that telescope could have turned around the lives of every single homeless person in the US. The whole system is an absolute joke, and at the same time mocks anyone naive enough to believe it, yet alone the fools that try and defend this tosh. Wake up, please.